So how do we step up our fight, especially against terrorism in sanctuaries like Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan? Well, I'm joined by Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, retired from the Marines, author of Counterfeit Lives, host of War Stories, and a Fox News military analyst. Always good to see you, Colonel.
Shannon, this is your Marine weekend, isn't it?
It is. I've been hanging out with a lot of Marines, and I can't think of better company to be with this weekend. So you have been in the region recently.
Yes.
You know what not only we are facing, but the coalition trying to stamp out ISIS. What are we getting right and wrong?
Well, first of all, we're paying the price for what Obama didn't do when he was president. 7 years of kowtowing to the Muslim Brotherhood, bending over backwards to ignore what ISIS was doing. The effort now to dislodge ISIS from Mosul, which is in northern Iraq, and maybe the future of Kurdistan, the effort to do that has created an enormous refugee problem that is now affecting the rest of the world. Now, the perpetrators last night probably weren't refugees from that attack, but nonetheless, they've got so many of them all over Europe and the UK that keeping tabs on the ones that they've actually been watching has become increasingly difficult. Our challenge in the United States is to immediately establish a policy of no safe havens for terrorists anywhere. In other words, there's probably going to be an effort to merge ISIS and Al-Qaeda. That will create an even larger global terrorist organization. If we can do that, and we get our allies to back us up in it, that will seriously adversely affect the propaganda of evil radical Islam being promulgated all over the world. So two parts of it. So no safe havens, and start making sure that you don't have opportunities for them to distribute this propaganda. That's going to take somebody sitting down at the high-tech summit so that a cell phone can't be used to establish a new wave of terror like they did for Ramadan. They're just using Ramadan as a way to motivate people's attention. And so what you're seeing now is the very real prospect of that social media being used to attack us. Fourth, what we need to do is implement the travel surveillance plan that President...
Well, it's up to the Supreme Court now.
It is. It's going to go to the Supreme Court. My hope is that immediately after that, they will start implementing it. I mean, we don't need more of what's happening in Europe coming here. The bottom line of it, it's not going to happen overnight. This is going to be a decades-long effort to stamp out radical Islamic evil. That's what it really is. And make sure that you can't have that kind of thing that's happened now 3 times in 3 months in London happening here. This is not an ultimate catastrophe for London. I remind people, 77 years ago today, at this very minute, the last boats were pulling off Dunkirk. That was a catastrophe. This is nothing like that. But terror has an effect on economics, tourism, all the things that you and I and the rest of the world want to be able to do. If it continues that way, it begins to degrade your entire society, and you turn to bad things. People start asking for much more than what Ray Kelly was able to do up in New York with his surveillance program. It becomes intrusive on our civil liberties. Thank God we in America have the civil liberty called the Second Amendment that says a gunman, an honest man, a good man with a gun can stop a lot of bad guys with knives. That would have helped last night. Yeah,
we've got a lot of constitutional rights here, thankfully, that we many fear have been eroded in recent years, and hopefully are getting a good shot in the arm of coming back. I want to ask you, too, about this issue of arming the Kurds, because in that region, there's been a lot made that over the last few years, they couldn't get their hands on anything that would have been helpful. Now we understand some weaponry, some vehicles, and other things are pouring to them. How could that help or change the equation?
Well, the Kurds are fighting for one thing, and that's a homeland. There's 40 million Kurds spread out between Iran, Iraq, Syria, and all the way down into the heartland of Turkey. In the end of it, that's what they want. Helping the Kurds is a good thing. They've suffered more than any other group, except perhaps Christians, which are in much smaller numbers out there. As a group of people, as an ethnic people, they deserve to have a homeland. Arming the Kurds was a good thing. Erdogan in Turkey...
Not happy.
Not happy, but you know what? We ought not to be too happy with Mr. Erdogan. Erdogan allowed ISIS to use his territory to form back in the early 2000s. He allowed them to move back and forth across the borders. He allowed thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of foreigners to come through Turkey to get into Syria, to allow ISIS to do what they began to do in enormous volume starting in 2012. So he's paying a price for it as well.
All right, Colonel, you've given us much food for thought. Always good to see you, sir. Thank you for your service and for being with us today.